Are you wondering how to start Kernel? Probably the most challenging and complex region in the base game of RoadCraft? Well, today, we're going to go through the first goal with a complete walkthrough, step by step. Operation Kernel sets place in Scandinavia during the summer season. Following a series of mishaps all linked to the Echo Corporation, you are assigned to investigate a catastrophic failure at a large geothermal complex. I hope you're ready for this. Let's get started.
Imagine you're a responsible corporation and want to tap into an active geothermal zone. Would you use fracking? The most destructive method of resource extraction outside of blowing rocks up? Well, it appears that if your levels of accountability are questionable, the answer is a resounding yes. The only silver lining is, with these guys in charge, we'll never run out of work. At least until they blow up the whole planet. For now, they almost destroyed the local power plant and a nearby town. So, your task is to check the damage and see if it can be fixed, and thus help devise countermeasures against more of the same happening again. As far as I'm concerned, those countermeasures should include a few execs getting thrown into the slammer for life. But who am I to suggest things, right?
Thanks, Kelly. Leaving the tunnel exit base, we're going to turn left and head up into the mountains. There's an old logging station up here, and we're going to scavenge some logs. There aren't very many trees to harvest in this map, so we're going to use the object scanner on our scout to find some laying around out here in the wild. Now that we have these scanned, let's jump back in the garage and we'll grab a logging forwarder truck. I'm going to use the Proseca to get started. I do like this truck because it has really big, massive mud tires, and it's pretty muddy up here in the hills, so it should perform pretty well. Let's run up here and grab these logs and we'll get them ready for the next part of the job. One of the first side tasks that we can work on is taking logs to the sawmill. We'll need 15 of them, so we're going to have to get as many out here as we can, and then we'll probably have to harvest the rest of them. I just completed this region a few days ago, and I'll have to say it was definitely my favorite in the base game, and it was quite challenging, so I'm excited to share with you what I learned, and hopefully the second time through it'll be a little bit easier for me because I know what to expect. By switching to the Resources tab, you can see the logs that are laying around and also the trees that can be harvested. There's not actually that many that can be cut down, so we're going to want to take advantage of as many as we can find as possible. These logging cranes are pretty similar to the ones in SnowRunner. And with the release of the 1.5 patch, they finally changed the legacy crane controls to match the correct buttons of the SnowRunner game. For the first week, it was a similar layout, but the buttons were opposite, and it was driving me insane, but I'm definitely a lot happier with the way it works now. After having so many hours in SnowRunner, it's difficult to just try to retrain your muscle memory. There's still some things that are kind of buggy and quirks in the game, but for the most part, it runs pretty smoothly. This map is really beautiful and the landscape is pretty challenging. There's a lot of big rocks and deep mud that you have to go through. So I'm trying to use vehicles that have the best tires and tracked vehicles if possible. So the first things that we need to focus on today are building some bridges and getting roads constructed so we can start developing the infrastructure of the region. We'll need logs in order to build the first bridges, so we're going to have to scavenge around and find some. we got all those loaded up, we'll park this truck off to the side, jump back into the links, and we're going to head on further down the road and see if we can find some more logs that we can scavenge. I believe that's all of them in this area. I do like to scan with the object scanner frequently because you never know what you're going to find laying around the map. Right up there is where we started at the tunnel base. We'll just continue on south, and the sawmill is down the road and around the corner. Looks like we've located our first sand quarry here. And just up ahead is the sawmill. There's another log.
Just you look at that. All this damage and the radio towers of all things are still standing. Still, there's an awful lot of static on all the bands. So we'll probably encounter our usual share of comms problems. And speaking of problems, you probably noticed already, but this area with all its volcanic rock is best suited for tracked vehicles. Just saying.
Alright, good advice. We'll make a loop around, and there should be a few more logs up here that we can find. We also completed the first part of our objective by reaching the sawmill, which unlocked a side objective for us. So let's continue with our loop around. We'll see if there's any more. We got one here. I'm going to park the links here, and then we'll activate the side objective, bring logs to the sawmill. We need to bring 15 logs over here to turn in. Let's quick make a mark on all of these logs so we know where to find them. Looks like that's all of them. We'll jump back into the forwarder and cruise over there. Let's go pick them up. Looks like we have 5 in the truck already, so we need 10 more. I do like driving this logging forwarder, but it does not turn very sharp at all, so you have to make a lot of 3-point turns with it. Let's cut over the hill and take a little shortcut over there so we don't have to drive all the way around. This thing has some massive tires and it drives over the rocks pretty well. Loading these logs up into the truck can be a bit finicky. It doesn't always work very well. And then I do like to delete the markers after I pick them up, just so I know that I've already gotten them. That should be 7. There's 4 more up ahead. Let's go grab those now. Then we'll have to do a little more exploring to find the rest of them. If you're wondering how many you have, you can drive into the drop-off zone and it shows you up where your objective is being tracked. Now we could skip all this and just run the scout around until we complete the first objective, but I kind of have a habit of trying to do the side tasks as soon as they're unlocked, because it definitely helps with the progress of the region, and most of the time you can get some fuel tokens from the side tasks, although with this region you're not going to for quite a while. But it does usually pay off to do the side objectives as soon as possible. I don't see any other logs on the map, so we can drive this over to the sawmill and get a final count on what we have, and then we'll know how many we need to find. And it looks like we have 11, so we'll need 4 more. We can jump back into the links, and we'll start tracking the main objective again. The next location is to the southeast, so we're going to make our way down there and see if we can find any more logs along the way. Besides what we need for the side objective, I know that we need to build at least 1 bridge to get started on the main objectives. I see there's 2 more logs over here, so we can make a mark on those quick. And then there's a couple different ways we can get to that first location we need to reach. You can head straight south and follow the road down, but I'm going to head east and take this back way that goes through the swamp. Either way is fine. I just kind of want to explore this area of the map first. This road going through here is pretty muddy, but the Lynx is a perfect vehicle for this. It also has a tall snorkel, so it does really well in the deeper water areas. As you can see, those front tires, they stick out beyond the front of the vehicle, so going up any steep inclines isn't a challenge for it basically at all. It has tires for days and 4-wheel steering. Okay, here's where we're going to need to build the first bridge. This is the road that comes straight south out of the sawmill, and this is the logistics facility. We can complete the first main objective by running down the road and reaching that location. That should open up the map and we can see more.
Well, now we know the general extent of the damage. Certainly nothing you can fix overnight, especially since there's no source of lumber anywhere around here. But they do have a sawmill, which probably explains why there's not a single piece of wood in sight. Not much in the way of forests around here, so you'll need to get some wood shipments from our neighbors. They don't have a mill, but they do have some wood left. Go figure. First, you'll need to clean up the mess at the sawmill's garage entrance. Next, deliver some replacement equipment from the Logistics Terminal. Then, plan a route from the northern tunnel to the warehouse to deliver the logs. And finally, make sure the Logistics Terminal can actually be of some use. The terminal itself seems to be fine, but its driveways are all a fine mess. So, you should clean it up too.
Thanks again, Kelly. Alright, so we've unlocked a few new objectives, and a couple of them contain infrastructure routes, which we're not ready for yet. One of them has a reach location task, so let's drive around the corner and see if we can get to it. And it looks like we're going to have to pull that van out of there. But the links just can't do it. So let's drop this here. Next on the list is to clear some objects that are up at the sawmill warehouse. So I'm going to pull a heavy transport truck out, and we can use it to haul a crane over there, and we'll get that stuff cleared out of the way. I do like using this crane that's on tracks, and try to use it whenever possible, but it's not very fast driving on the road, so I try to haul it on my trailer whenever I can. Let's run this over to the sawmill warehouse, and we'll clear all the junk out of the way. This road is super muddy, and just like in SnowRunner, the legs of the trailer do like to get hung up on stuff, so you'll have to be aware of that when you're driving down these areas with the deeper ruts. Maybe try to stay up on the side if possible. I like to use this Zix heavy transporter to pull my stuff around whenever I can. It's just a fun truck to drive, so I look for reasons to use it. It's a little bit slow moving with this thing right now though, without having these roads built yet. We'll get to that shortly. Now, I'm not going to drive this truck down in there to get unloaded because it's kind of tight, and driving down in there is just going to make the problem even worse. So I'll leave it up here on the top where the ground is firm, and we'll just drive the crane down in there.
Want to hear something funny? While you were driving, I found some more info on this sawmill here. Guess why there's no wood around here and why the mill was broken even before the quake. Hint 1. The owners ran it at triple capacity all the time. Hint 2. They never bothered with equipment maintenance. You gotta give them credit. They had a strategy and they stuck to it. Ah, the miracle of optimization. I'd find it more funny if we didn't have to fix it.
Make sure you're tracking the objectives so you know which pieces actually need to be pulled out of there. It's any of the ones that have the yellow triangle. And I almost tipped the crane over because I didn't have the tracks pointed in the right direction. Lifting perpendicular to the way the tracks are pointed is not a good idea. I'll get a couple of these closer items moved out of the way and then we'll spin the tracks around. Alright, we can swing over here and get these couple of vehicles moved. These ones, I'm just going to set them right up on the roof. Make a nice hood ornament. And then we have 2 more containers and 2 vans that we need to move. So we'll drive around to get a better angle on them, and we'll just throw them off to the side. This van decided it was going to roll back down the hill, so we'll make sure to throw them further up on the junk pile there. Okay, that's everything. We can leave this here for now. The rest of the objects we need to clear are down at the logistics terminal, and we need to build that bridge before we can drive down there. So let's get a bridge set up so we can see how many logs we need. And it looks like 3. And I know there's a few logs out here in the hills. If we get really low, we can drive out there and get those too. We'll make a mark on the rest of these, just so we know where they're at. Kind of scan the area. And I think that's all of them. Let's jump back into that Proseca. We can load up a few more that are close by and we'll get them turned in for the side objective. That way we don't have to drive back up here later on with logs. I kind of try to do everything that's in the area where I'm at so that as I move across the map, I don't have to backtrack. That's why we're doing more than just the main objectives right now. I do like the way that logging is set up in this game more than SnowRunner, where each individual log counts as a log instead of the whole load, and the fact that you have to harvest most of them, although like on this map sometimes you find them laying around, but for the most part you have to harvest them. It puts a little more focus on the process of getting the logs than it does on the transportation of them, which I kinda like. Also, you get to drive some pretty neat trucks. There's a few other logging forwarders in this game so far. One of them is based off of the dozer that you get, and I don't really care to use that one that often because it doesn't have a very wide wheelbase and it tends to tip over a lot. This one is a lot more stable, although it doesn't turn well and it moves a little bit slow, but it's probably more capable and a lot safer to drive around in these uneven spots. And then the third one is the Greenway, and that one is an Aramatsu. I would have to say that I like that one the most because it has the biggest bunk on it, and it seems to be pretty stable and fairly capable. It might not be quite as capable as this truck in the deeper, muddier areas because it doesn't quite have as tall of tires, but it's still a really good log forwarder, and I actually use that one the most. But it always depends on the job that's at hand for me. I pick and choose my trucks for whatever the job calls for. Okay, we should have enough now. Let's run back up to the sawmill and we'll get these turned in. Then we'll have that side objective complete right away. There it is, we've completed the first side objective.
All right, the sawmill folks are back in business. That should make them happy. Unless, of course, they wanted to be lumberjacks themselves, leaping from log to log as they float down the mighty rivers of Northlock. Then maybe they should have planted as many as they cut down, right?
From here, we're going to have to harvest some more so we have some to use to build bridges. So I'm going to jump into the garage and grab that Aramatsu crayfish. This is a pretty decent log harvester. I like to use this in place of the tracked one, although the tracked one might work a little better in this region because of the 0-point turning it has and the deep mud. This tractor gets through the mud pretty well, but there are some spots that get too deep for it. I still try to use it whenever possible though. As you can see, it is quite capable. Okay, there's some trees over here that we can harvest, but not all of them. So we're going to have to use our tree scanner to find them. And then I'm going to set them out by the road when I process them. It'll be a little easier to pick them up with our forwarder that way. As you can see, there's a few more over here to the right. Just make sure you use your tree scanner until you find them. And then we'll head back out to the road and process it. I'm going to start making a pile over here. And then we'll repeat the process, and this goes on for about another 15 minutes. So we'll just jump to the end. We've got a decent pile of logs here now, and we've cut most of the trees down. I've got every one of them that I could find. So we'll go back to the garage and grab that Greenway forwarder. This is the one I was talking about. It has quite a bit bigger bunk. I managed to fit 35 logs in this thing, although it was barely crawling across the map when I did it because of how much weight was on it. But it will do it. And it is pretty capable. It tears through this mud like there's no tomorrow. But as you can see, the tires are not quite as tall as they are on the Prosecco. And this water here was a little bit deeper than I was expecting. I flooded the engine out. But by turning the wheel a few times, I managed to get it up high enough to get it started again. So as you can see, it has a little harder time getting through here than that first one did. Just doesn't have the ground clearance. We'll get all these loaded up and we'll continue on down the road. I noticed in the first week that the gripper on the log crane held on to the logs really well, and then after the first update released a few days ago, there's been more than one time where it drops the logs like they do in SnowRunner. So I don't know if that was introduced in the patch or not, but it doesn't work quite as well. So we got them all loaded up. Now we can strap them down. Take another quick peek around to see if there's any that we missed. Doesn't look like it. And it's time to start making our way down to that first bridge that we need to build. So we got quite a long journey to get down there. Just make sure you keep heading south on the road. And we made it to the bridge. On the way here, I decided that I'm going to replace this with a wide wooden bridge. I was thinking that it would probably use less logs for the narrow one, but it actually doesn't. So we can get the same length bridge for 3 logs. Alright, we got that one built. I'm just gonna park this truck here off to the side. There's a couple other logs over by the river, but instead of driving this over there, I'm just going to use the links to run over there and pull it back. We'll get the closer one since it's not too far away, and I'll just leave the further one for now. One thing that I really do like about this game is the fact that the logs are winchable and craneable. So if you don't like using the log cranes, you don't have to. You can just use a truck with a regular crane. A lot of the big rocks are winchable also, so it's kind of nice to use your Scout to pull them out of the way. Sometimes these cranes can be a little finicky. They jerk around quite a bit. Okay, that's all that we can get for now. Let's park this truck off to the right. And then opening the map, we're going to take a quick look at the sand quarries. I'm going to make a mark on the edge of them so that I know how far to reach when I'm refilling the dump truck. We're going to have to start building some roads now before we can set up the infrastructure routes. Let's jump into the garage and grab that bowhead. If you don't have this dump truck DLC, you can also use the smaller tracked one. It'll do the same job, it just holds a lot less, so you have to refill it more often. We'll get the first road built all the way down to the logging warehouse, so we can get that infrastructure route set up. The convoy that comes in from the tunnel exit is going to bring in some logs for us, so that should help to get our supplies stocked up. This bowhead definitely has some buggy characteristics to it. Sometimes the dump box doesn't like to dump when you push the buttons, and other times it ends up dumping the whole thing out and not letting you drive, so you get a huge pile. If you get too much sand underneath the back of it, it'll throw your truck forward, so you have to make sure you're always moving when you're dumping. But since we're in a quarry zone for this entire route, I'm just going to get all the sand dumped before I start leveling it. There's a couple roads that we need to build in order to finish the first objectives. The first one is the convoy that comes from the tunnel exit base down to the sawmill warehouse here, and the second one will be a road from the logistics terminal up to the other sawmill warehouse. Both of them use 4-on off-road trucks, so I'm not going to actually pave these roads. I'm just going to get sand on them so that the mud isn't so deep, and the trucks will do just fine. I usually only pave the roads when I'm expecting highway trucks to be driving on them, like the Azov or the Wayfarer, and there are quite a few convoys that use those vehicles, so it does pay off to pave them for those situations. It can save you a lot of headache in the long run. but anytime the convoys have the boron trucks and also like the mule utility trucks, you don't have to put as much work into them. Just get the basic sand layer down and flatten it out, and they'll do just fine. So continuing straight down this road will take you to that bridge we just built, but we're going to turn off to the right and head over to this other warehouse. It's just right around the corner. And here's our destination. I'm going to knock this fence down just so it's not such a sharp corner for the trucks. Then we'll run the road right around there up to that building. Typically, if you see buildings like this with the yellow doors, you can pretty much always guarantee that you're going to have to run a convoy to it or from it. There's a space in front of the building that won't let you dump, so I'll just run the sand right up to that spot. We can pull this off to the side and park it, and then we'll run back to the garage and get a dozer. And for this, I'm going to use the Pioneer. It's another tracked vehicle. Works pretty good. And I found the best way to get a smooth road for me is to just run the entire distance from start to finish without stopping. The first pass down is going to be kind of the rough flattening. It will definitely still leave some humps in the road where the piles are taller. As you can see, there's a couple of massive piles up ahead here. I did not mean to dump that much out, but the truck just wasn't responding correctly. But I usually just try to make one pass all the way to the end without stopping, and that'll do the first rough leveling, and then when I make a second pass, I go all the way back to the beginning. That's going to smooth it out quite a bit more. If there's any spots that are taller, I'll stop and go over them a couple times just to flatten them out. Like up ahead here, you can see there's a hump in the road, so I'm going to back up right to the beginning of it and run over it again, and that's just going to flatten it out more so it's closer to the same height as the rest of the road. And then the last time I go across it, this is just for the finishing touches to smooth out anything that I did on this second pass. After this, we won't go over it again. But you can see it's looking pretty smooth now. There's one spot going down this hill where I didn't get enough sand, and you can see that the base terrain is starting to show through there. We'll just have to live with that. Like I said, it's just boron trucks coming through, so they're not going to have any problem. Now we can get the second part of the road down to the warehouse, then we'll be done with this. And that convoy will be ready to run. I can't remember for sure how many logs that we get from that first convoy, but I think it's like 24 or 26 or something like that. And I believe it's 2 per truck, so it does take quite a while and many trips to get the full stocked warehouse. But it's nice to have your supplies stacking up while you're working on other things. So I usually try to get my AI routes run in the beginning so they can be doing their thing while I'm working on other objectives. Alright, that one's done. We'll jump back in the bowhead and we can continue over to the other sawmill warehouse so we can work on the other route. This one's ready to deploy, but I want to make sure my trucks are out of the way first, so I'll just wait. And right here we're going to have to turn off and make a Y in the road. So the first convoy is going to be coming from the tunnel base down to the warehouse, and the second convoy is going to be running from the logistics terminal up this way to this warehouse. So they'll be going in opposite directions. There are times when the trucks will run into each other, and in that situation you can split the routes up so they will pass each other instead of hitting head on. But the roads aren't very wide, so then you run the risk of the trucks driving off the side of the road. For that reason, I usually just run them together, and then if it ever happens where they hit each other, I'll just run one convoy and leave the other one inactive until it's complete. You don't have to run them both at the same time. ahead here, you can see that yellow flag that we put down, that marker. That's going to be the edge of our sand quarry, and we can't refill our dump truck after that point. So once we reach that spot, I'll show you how I usually do it so that we can keep a good smooth road going. This bowhead doesn't back up over the sand piles very well, so I usually just try to keep it out front. Now we'll jump in the Pioneer and we'll flatten this out. It's not very far up there, so this shouldn't take long. And then when I reach the bowhead, I'm going to stop a little bit short so it doesn't flatten everything out all the way up to it. Then we can start tracking the planner route from the northern tunnel to the warehouse objective, and we'll get that first infrastructure route planned out. The trucks will always try to drive wherever the blue lines are, so use as many dots as you think are needed. We can get that convoy sent along the way, and we'll jump back into the garage. We're going to grab that Baikal, whatever it is, the big dump truck. This truck can act as a mobile quarry. It has a radius around it where you can actually transfer sand to the other vehicles. Although it's kind of a leaky truck, so you have to be careful when you're driving it because sand does fall out the back end and out the side even if you get a little bit too tipped. So just take it slow when you're going around the corners. I don't usually use this truck to dump sand down the roads because it has such a huge box on it, you can accidentally dump way too much. So I mostly just use it for shuttling sand. We'll drive it right up behind the Pioneer, and then we can transfer sand up to the bowhead from there. And we'll run these 3 trucks in a row. The transfer radius is not very big, but it does extend the original quarry radius a little ways, and the bowhead can be filled up twice off of that bigger dump truck. And then we'll jump back in the Pioneer and just flatten this out and move our entire operation forward as we go. Make sure you stop short and then bring your bigger dump truck up. I don't know what to call it because I can't pronounce the name. Baikal? It's something. This thing is just out of control. It either doesn't dump at all or it dumps everything in one spot. I'm not having very much luck with this bowhead today. So then once your bigger dump truck is empty, you can just back it up the road and refill it. And you only have to be in the quarry radius to start the filling. Once you get it started, you can drive out of it. You don't have to sit there and wait. We're almost to the end. The door on the left is the one we're going to. So we'll just get the last load ran up here. That should be good. We'll park this truck off to the side. We'll run that Pioneer up and flatten it out. And this half of the route will be pretty close to complete. Okay, let's make one more pass with the Pioneer all the way down to the other end, and then we'll start running the road down to the logistics terminal from there. And we did have a vehicle failed the route notification, so I'm just going to adjust this one marker a little bit to the side. Looks like it drove off onto the rocks there and flipped over. And then just watch it for a minute to make sure that it doesn't have the same problem. And it looks like it's good. It's almost to the warehouse now. I try not to pay too much attention to those routes while they're running, because I can end up over babysitting them, and I waste all my time instead of working on other things. There, the objective is complete, and we got 2 logs out of that, and then they'll continue running down the road and just bringing 2 logs each time. Geez, that truck was hauling. Looked like he was driving a little reckless there. We already got another one complete. One thing I've noticed though is they don't tend to run back to back anymore. It seemed like they did when I first started playing this game, but something changed where they end up having some time between them now. So if you notice that your route isn't running, you can cancel the route and restart it, and it'll force a truck to run down. But I'm not going to worry about it right now. I'm just going to let it hopefully do its thing. I don't necessarily mind not having trucks running all the time, because they tend to get in your way when you're trying to do work in an area, and they can run you off the road. We don't necessarily need the logs at this moment, so I'm not pressed for time on that one. Our greenway has quite a few of them loaded up down at the logistics terminal. We should be able to build any bridges we need to build with that. And the objectives that require logs won't be until a little bit later on, so we've got time. Now this part of the road, going down to the bridge, there's some spots here that get pretty muddy and deep ruts. It can be kind of a pain even with this bowhead to get through there. So it's just going to be a lot of dumping sand, and if it bugs out like that, You end up dumping it all in one spot. Yeah, they got to do some work on this thing. Maybe make the sand clip through that back axle or something, because it is buggy as all get out. I like the truck though. So I'll just dump sand all the way up to my yellow flag, because that's inside the quarry radius. And then once we get to that spot, then we'll bring that other big dump truck down and we'll start doing our little sand convoy operation again. I just feel like I don't have any control over this thing right now. Either it dumps and doesn't drive, or it drives and doesn't dump, or it dumps everything in one spot. Let's bring the Pioneer down and we'll get this part flattened out. We got a pretty good start on the infrastructure of this map now. Although, out of all of the maps that I played, this one has the most roads that you need to build in order to complete everything. So there will be a lot of road building. And now we can bring that Bacal truck down. See, our convoy still isn't running. I'm not sure why it takes so long in between them. I don't know if it's set to a timer where the trucks only run every so often, or if it's bugged. Because like I said, when I first started playing this, it seemed like the trucks ran back to back, and then it changed. We got some pretty big humps on the road here. We'll have to run back over this a couple more times. Sometimes this truck works smoothly and other times it just doesn't. If you end up with a spot where the sand didn't dump, it's probably a good idea to run back and fill that spot in. So we'll get this flattened out. and then we'll run the big dump truck back and get it filled up. And we're just going to keep repeating this process all the way down to the bridge. Once you get to the bridge, you can dump sand right up to the end of it. It won't dump on top of it. It'll just disappear. And then we'll park this truck off to the side, get everything flattened out, and then we're going to have to work out a new sand quarry situation. So we can open up the sand quarries tab, and you can see that we're right on the edge of a sand pit. But the sand pit needs to be activated, and it takes 4 fuel tokens to do it. We don't have any fuel tokens at the moment, so instead we're going to go back to the garage and grab our mobile scalper trailer. This will set up a sand quarry wherever we need it, but the catch is you have to be parked over the top of sand to use it. So we can bring it down and put it right into that sand pit. Instead of activating the one that's there, we'll just use our own. You can see all the humps in the road. The Zix is flying over the top of them. Catching some air. Definitely gonna have to run back over this one again. But now that we're down here, I'm gonna drive up ahead and get turned around. We'll get this trailer parked over the top of that sand pit. Right here to the right. This trailer is pretty handy to use, but it's definitely hard to find sand that you can use it on. There, one of the logging trucks ran again. Okay, so it is running. Alright, you do have to stay in this truck until everything is unfolded before you can jump back into the other ones. So we'll get in the bowhead and get it filled up and we'll continue on. We're almost to the end now and then we can get the second convoy dispatched. Also, I noticed that the mobile quarry has a bigger radius than the actual sand pit that you can activate. So it works better to use our own trailer for this. But now it's not refilling my truck. Not sure what's going on here. Try the other one. I get the option to refill, so let's refill the bowhead. And it's not working. Something's bugged out, so we'll just use the big truck. that one's not working either. I'll try shutting the scalper down. And redeploying it. And it's saying I have the option to refill. But only a little bit goes in. I think it's just transferring a little bit from the other truck. So I retained the scalper back to the garage, and I'm driving it all the way back down there again. I've noticed before that there's been times when trucks are bugged, and if you retain them, it kind of resets the truck. So we'll try this again. It's still not working. So I ended up shutting the game down and restarting it. One last try. Third time's a charm. And that worked. We also got a nice morning sun. We didn't want to work in the rain anyway, did we? Okay, so the second convoy comes from this road to my right. So we're just going to run this all the way up to the end where it meets that concrete bridge. It's a good place to stop. Then we'll make another road going into the right here. This is kind of an inconvenient place for that trailer to be parked, but you don't really have any other options. And this is far enough. So we'll get that sand flattened out, and we'll work on getting that other road. You can see that yellow door off to the right there, that's where they come out. I thought maybe I could get underneath it, but I guess not. I love having the zero turn on this thing. I'm just going to run this up to the low spot that I can see here, and I'll stop right there. Alright, we just have one more little stretch to do, and then we'll be done with the road building. We can complete the other objectives. So this spot isn't really too bad, and the trucks might not have any problem at all getting out of here, so if you didn't feel like doing this area, you don't have to. Let's just say I've babysat enough infrastructure routes to kind of go above and beyond now. I would much rather just set them and forget them than have to go back and deal with them every single time they fail. If there's one thing I've learned about this game, is that if the AI trucks can fail, they will. It's like Murphy's Law. Alright, that should be good. We can get these vehicles parked out of the way. And we need to move that bow head, then we'll get the route set up. So we can start tracking the proper objective and then plot the route. And this has to go all the way up to that sawmill warehouse. So as you can see, there is one little section there where they overlap. That might become a problem later on with them running into each other. I also loaded that tracked crane up onto the Zix heavy hauler when I had the game shut down. So we can move that truck out of the way. I'm going to run this road all the way down to the logistics terminal, and I'm going to keep in mind that there is a truck headed towards me on the same road. So when I see it, I'll have to pull off to the side. There's a lot of weight on this trailer, so it's not moving very fast. There's that truck coming up the road. I'm gonna just pull off this other road here for a moment, let it go past. He seems like a happy trucker. Nice smooth road to drive up. Then we'll run this down and hopefully we can get there before that second truck deploys, because there really isn't anywhere that we can pull off here. I did run over this road one more time too when I had the game shut down. It was a little bit of missed footage. Just took care of a couple side things. Alright, so that one's complete. The second truck is coming. There it is. I gotta get just a little bit further. And he runs into me. But that's okay, we made it just in the nick of time. So I'm just checking that other convoy and there aren't any trucks running at the moment, but I see we have 8 logs, so they are still running. Let's start tracking the next objective. We need to prepare the logistics terminal area. So there's one spot that we need to reach, and there's 2 spots that we need to clear the area of objects. That's what we're going to use the crane for, and then we'll use our scout to reach that location. But if you remember, that van was down in the ditch. We need to get that out of the way first. So we'll use the crane to run over there and pull it out. Anytime you see objects that have the black and yellow checkered tape on them, those are typically objects that you can interact with. So we're going to run the scout to the right here and take a back way up into the building. We should be able to knock that thing down and use it as a bridge. I do like the little parkour courses that they have set up for the scouts in these buildings. It's fun. And then you can see those yellow loops on the side of the walls. Those are winch points, if you need to use them. This Lynx works really good for this type of stuff because it has the 4-wheel steering. And then having the tires set out in front of the vehicle like that, you can go up pretty much any walls. Just be careful when you're hitting this so you don't go too fast and fall off. And we could use it just how it is, but I want to recenter it just to make it a little bit nicer to drive through here. So I'm going to use the crane just to pull it over a little bit. Just like that. And then I'll use the crane to pull the Scout down. Alright. Let's go reach that location we need to hit. So that part is done. And then jump back in the crane and we need to clear out those 2 spots. One of those areas is for the steel beams facility, the one that's closest to us, and the other one is just blocking a path. I enjoy the mission progression in this game, how you have to complete certain things in order to do the next stuff, and also having to get the crafting facilities back up and running. I find it interesting and enjoyable to do. There's a lot of little stuff over here, so this might be kind of tedious to get cleared out. Just gonna try to find any open areas that I can stuff these things into. Looks like our log trucks are still running. We got 10 logs now. So that's good. I'm feeling good about it. One thing that I wish that they would improve is selecting the objects you want to crane, because having to cycle through them with the X button, it is kind of a pain, especially when you select the object that you're trying to grab and then accidentally go past it and you have to cycle through everything all over again to get there. It's not good if you have twitchy fingers, that's for sure, but it still works fine. It's just, if there was anything that I would ask for an improvement on, that would probably be the biggest thing. Maybe making it possible to select with your mouse, but it still works. We'll just push this last stuff out of the way. Then we have one more area to clear out, and it's just right around the corner. These gates are only one-way movement. So if the handles are on the outside, then that means they pull out, but if you don't see handles, you can run through them. There's not too much stuff over here, so this shouldn't take too long. Just a few crates and a van and a tank. We're getting close. I can taste the victory. Now we just need to move that van and this will be done. So all in all, I have to say, RoadCraft is a pretty good game. Saber, you knocked it out of the park with this one. I was kind of hesitant, but I'm enjoying it. Objective is complete. And we also completed the first main goal of the region. There's 4 of them in this map, so.
Good job sorting out the lumber situation. Of course, logs from afar won't do the local economy any favors in the long run, but we can put this place together now. Which reminds me, we need more than just lumber for that. The map shows a machine yard not far from your position, and it could help us get the rest of what we need. Could you kindly go and check if it's still there? Same goes for the village nearby while you're at it.
Thanks, Kelly. So on the next episode, we're going to have to find that machine yard and also the village that's close by. Both of those locations will unlock another base for us to utilize, so make sure you come back and check it out. We'll see you then. Appreciate you being here, and thanks for watching.